2,145 senior NASA employees are set to leave under early retirement and buyout offers as part of broader efforts to reduce the federal workforce. These departures make up most of the 2,694 civil servants who have agreed to leave so far and will significantly impact NASA's technical and managerial expertise, particularly in science and human spaceflight. The cuts come amid a proposed 25% White House budget reduction for 2026, which would slash over 5,000 NASA staff overall. Key centers like Goddard, Johnson, Kennedy, and others face hundreds of losses each, Politico has reported. Critics warn the exodus could undermine plans to return astronauts to the moon by the year 2027 and later send them to Mars, while departing staff cite fears of budget cuts, leadership gaps, and private sector opportunities drawing talent away. Federal Reserve officials were divided at their June meeting over how soon and how much to cut interest rates, balancing concerns about tariff-driven inflation with signs of economic and labor market slowing. Minutes released Wednesday showed they unanimously held rates steady at 4.25% to 4.5%, while most expected at least some cuts this year if inflation stayed manageable. Views varied widely, from wanting cuts as soon as July to favoring none in 2025, CNBC has reported. Policymakers agreed to stay cautious given lingering inflation risks and a strong but slowing economy, with uncertainty over the impact of Trump's shifting tariff policies also weighing in on their outlook. It became the first publicly traded company to hit a $4 trillion market value on Wednesday, after its stock rose 2.5% to a record high. The U.S. chipmaker has surged about 20% this year, fueled by booming demand for its AI chips that power data centers for companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. NVIDIA overtook Apple and Microsoft to reach the milestone first. The company's revenue for the latest quarter was up 69% year over year to $44.1 billion, CNN has reported. Analysts see NVIDIA as central to the AI revolution and expect its market value could reach $6 trillion by 2028, despite challenges such as export restrictions to China and competition from cheaper AI models. Yaccarino announced Wednesday that she is stepping down as CEO of X, the social media platform owned by Elon Musk. Her resignation comes shortly after X's Grok chatbot was shut down for posting anti-Semitic content. Yaccarino did not mention the controversy in her farewell message, instead praising the team's efforts to improve user safety and regain advertiser trust. Hired in May of 2023 to lead business operations while Musk focused on technology, Yaccarino often had to manage fallout over anti-Semitism on the platform and advertiser departures, NBC News has reported. Her exit had reportedly been planned for over a week. Musk thanked her for her work in a brief post. A humanoid robot participated in a high school graduation ceremony in Fujian, China, showcasing the country's rapid progress in robotics. At the July 1st event, the robot walked on stage, exchanged a handshake with a teacher, received a certificate in its tote bag, and posed for photos, delighting the audience. The ceremony highlighted how humanoid robots are moving from labs into public life. China is heavily investing in robotics, competing with the United States in a tech arms race with growing uses from education to security, the New York Post has reported. Globally, interest in human-like robots is surging, with figures like Elon Musk also advancing in the field. Perplexity AI on Wednesday unveiled Comet, a AI-powered web browser designed to compete with Google and Microsoft. Available to Perplexity Max subscribers, which is $200 a month, with invite-only access rolling out this summer, Comet lets users ask complex questions via voice or text and connect to enterprise apps like Slack. Known for its AI search engine, with source links and publisher revenue sharing model, Perplexity is also reportedly seeking $500 million in new funding at a $14 billion valuation, CNBC has reported. The company says it will keep adding features and refining Comet to deliver accurate, trustworthy AI. Between the European Union and the United States on a new trade deal remain unresolved after missing a July 9th target date originally tied to a pause on President Trump's threatened reciprocal tariffs. While no deal was reached by the deadline, President Trump suggested an agreement could still be finalized within days, noting improved negotiations with the EU. U.S. officials said Europe has made meaningful offers to open its markets to American products, while the EU is reportedly willing to accept a 10% baseline tariff, well below Trump's earlier threats of 50%, CNBC has reported. EU leaders remain cautious, pledging to defend European interest while preparing for all outcomes. President Joe Biden's former doctor, Kevin O'Connor, has refused to answer questions about giving President Biden a clean bill of health before his cancer diagnosis during a closed-door congressional hearing. Summoned by the Republican-led House Oversight Committee, O'Connor invoked patient-doctor confidentiality and the Fifth Amendment when asked if he was told to lie or believe that Biden was unfit. Chairman James Comer accused him of a cover-up, citing claims of Biden's cognitive decline despite health reports declaring him fit. O'Connor's attorney argued disclosing details would violate medical ethics, the U.S. Sun has reported. The committee is investigating Biden's health and use of the auto pen for official documents. Trump met with his cabinet at the White House to discuss trade, foreign policy, and other issues. He addressed the recent deadly flooding in Texas and announced plans to visit the area on Friday. President Trump also spoke about new tariff letters sent to several countries and the August 1st deadline for trade deals aimed at correcting imbalances. Ahead of the meeting, officials, including the Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins and Attorney General Pam Bondi, held a press conference on new efforts to protect U.S. farms, The Hill has reported. Meanwhile, Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu visited Washington, meeting with Trump, Speaker Mike Johnson, and senators. A South Korean court approved the new arrest of former President Yoon Suk-yeol on Thursday over his brief imposition of martial law in December, citing risk of evidence destruction. Yoon, previously impeached and released from detention in March, now faces additional charges, including abuse of power and falsifying documents. Prosecutors accuse him of attempting an illegal power grab to suppress opponents. His new detention could last months, as prosecutors seek further indictments, NPR reported. Current President Lee Jae-myung has approved broad investigations into Yoon's actions and other allegations against his administration. Agents clashed with protesters during an immigration raid at a marijuana farm in Southern California, one of at least two large-scale raids in the region on Thursday. Footage showed agents detaining people and using crowd control measures. Governor Gavin Newsom condemned the raids as inhumane, accusing the Trump administration of spreading fear in the immigrant community, ABC News reported. Similar enforcement actions have recently escalated across California, including a heavily armed raid in Los Angeles that drew criticism from local officials. Our NCT member Ta'il, 31, has been sentenced to 3 years and 6 months in prison in South Korea for raping an unconscious Chinese tourist along with 2 accomplices. The crime, which took place after drinking in Seoul's Itaewon district, was described as extremely grave by the court. All 3 men must also complete a sexual violence treatment program, the BBC reported. Ta'il left NCT in August of 2023 when the allegations first surfaced. Final day of his UK state visit, French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced a new plan to curb small boat crossings. The proposed one-in, one-out policy would return migrants arriving illegally in small boats to France in exchange for legal asylum seekers. Critics say the plan lacks deterrence and details remain unclear, the BBC reported. Macron and Starmer also agreed to coordinate nuclear deterrence for the first time and strengthen joint defense procurement, including cruise missiles. 2 Arkansas prison employees were fired for policy violations that enabled the May 25th escape of inmate Grant Harden, known as the Devil in the Ozarks, from Calico Rock Prison. Harden, serving sentences for murder and rape, disguised himself in a homemade law enforcement uniform and walked through a gate an employee opened without verifying his identity. Lawmakers said the incident reveals deeper systemic problems, such as lax supervision that led Hardin to make the disguise unnoticed. He was recaptured on June the 6th and moved to a maximum security facility, the Associated Press has reported. Officials are conducting a review that may lead to further disciplinary actions and policy changes. 30 construction workers were safely rescued after a partial tunnel collapse in Los Angeles trapped them about 400 feet underground. The cave-in happened between the tunnel boring machine, located 5 miles from the entrance, and workers 6 miles in, forcing them to scramble over 12 feet of loose soil to reach safety. Aerial footage showed the workers being lifted out in yellow cage hoisted by a crane, with none suffering major injuries. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass praised first responders and confirmed all workers were safe and reunited with family members, Fox News reports. The tunnel is part of a $700 million 7-mile project to carry treated wastewater to the Pacific Ocean. Work is paused while the cause of the collapse is investigated. More than 25 people were hospitalized Thursday after a suspected mass overdose in Baltimore's Penn North neighborhood. 5 victims were reported in critical condition, while the overall number of those affected may rise as officials continue to identify additional cases. Emergency crews treated the scene as a mass casualty incident and distributed resources to help reverse overdoses, the BBC has reported. Police are treating the area as an active crime scene, and investigators are working to determine what substance was involved and the circumstances of the incident. U.S. Secret Service personnel have been suspended for security failures at President Donald Trump's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, where a gunman tried to assassinate him, killing one attendee and injuring others. Trump was grazed by a bullet but survived. The Secret Service called the event an operational failure and has since implemented reforms, including better aerial monitoring and coordination with local law enforcement, the BBC has reported. The attack led to the resignation of the agency's director and drew strong criticism from Congress for preventable lapses in security. A 22 Israeli man was killed in a combined shooting and stabbing attack in the West Bank. The attackers, 2 Palestinian Authority police officers, recently returned from Qatar, were killed at the scene after exchanging fire. Following the attack, the IDF set up roadblocks around Hebron and Bethlehem, the Jerusalem Post has reported. Israeli leaders praised security forces for their quick response and vowed to combat terrorism in the region. 19-year-old Australian surfer Darcy Devholtz was rescued Thursday after spending the night on uninhabited North Solitary Island, which is about 7 miles offshore. He went missing Wednesday after surfing near Woolly, prompting a land and sea search. His father made an emotional plea for help online. Police and Marine Rescue NSW found him safely the next day, calling it a miracle, CBS News has reported. He is receiving medical treatment. A senior Ukrainian security service officer, Colonel Ivan Voronik, was shot dead with a silenced pistol on a Kyiv street Thursday morning. He was killed with 5 close-range shots while leaving his apartment. Ukrainian officials blamed Russian special services. Voronik led a counter-terrorism unit that had fought Russia since 2014. Both sides have carried out assassinations during the war, with Ukrainian attacks killing Russian generals in Moscow in recent months, the Telegraph reports. Meanwhile, Russia has intensified missile and drone strikes on Ukraine, prompting President Zelensky to urge faster sanctions and more investment in air defense from allies. Crew members were rescued from the Liberian-flagged cargo ship Eternity Sea after it was attacked in the Red Sea by Yemen's Houthi rebels, killing at least 4 sailors and 15 others were still missing. The Houthis said they targeted the Greek-owned ship with drones and missiles in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. The ship sank off Yemen's coast after sustaining heavy damage. The attack follows another recent Houthi strike on Israel-linked shipping, raising fears of a renewed threat to Red Sea navigation, Al Jazeera has reported. The United States condemned the attacks, calling them a threat to maritime security. French authorities raided the far-right National Rally headquarters in Paris as part of an investigation into alleged illegal campaign financing between 2020 and 2024, including possible money laundering and forged documents. RN President Jordan Bardella called it, quote, harassment campaign and an attack on democracy. No charges have been filed yet, Euronews has reported. The raid follows recent convictions of RN leader Marine Le Pen and others for embezzling EU funds, which has barred Le Pen from office for 5 years, a ban that she is appealing. Ukraine's security service, the SBU, has detained 2 Chinese nationals in Kyiv for allegedly attempting to steal classified military technology related to the Neptune cruise missile system. The suspects, a former student and his father, are accused of trying to pass the information to Chinese intelligence. The younger man was caught during a document handover, and both face espionage charges, Kyiv Independent has reported. The incident comes amid rising tensions between Ukraine and China, with Kyiv recently sanctioning 5 Chinese firms for aiding Russia's war effort. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is capitalizing on growing criticism of European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen ahead of a crucial European Parliament confidence vote. Orban condemned von der Leyen over undisclosed communications with Pfizer's CEO during the pandemic, calling the vote a test of Europe's future amid corruption and competence concerns. This attack follows the EU urging Hungary to adopt stricter fiscal measures, which Budapest rejected, prioritizing local families and companies over multinational interest, Politico has reported. The tensions highlight the ongoing clash between Hungary and the European Union over rule of law issues and funding, with Orban intensifying his anti-EU rhetoric ahead of national elections. President Trump met with leaders from 5 African nations at the White House to discuss business opportunities, economic development, security, and infrastructure. President Trump praised Africa's natural resources and highlighted recent peace efforts on the continent. While the 5 countries are unlikely to face U.S. tariffs, concerns remain over U.S. trade policies and visa restrictions, which African officials criticize as harmful. The United States also announced funding for a mining project in Gabon. This meeting was part of ongoing U.S. efforts to strengthen its ties in Africa amid growing Chinese influence, Al Jazeera has reported. Meanwhile, recent cuts to U.S. foreign aid have raised concerns about their potential impact on African health outcomes. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi defended the unexplained 1-minute gap in surveillance footage from Jeffrey Epstein's jail cell, saying it's a routine daily reset at the Metropolitan Detention Center. The DOJ released the video to counter conspiracy theories about Epstein's death, which was ruled a suicide. However, the missing minute fueled further speculation and backlash, especially among conservatives who criticized Bondi for failing to produce a promised, quote, client list of powerful individuals that were linked to Epstein. Bondi clarified she referred to the broader case file, not an actual list, and the DOJ reaffirmed no new disclosures would be made, the Daily Mail has reported. Even President Donald Trump publicly defended Bondi, cutting off questions about Epstein during a cabinet meeting. FBI Director Kash Patel also stated that he found no evidence implicating powerful figures after reviewing the available material. Sunshine Stewart, a 48-year-old paddleboarder who went missing in Maine last week, was found dead on Crawford Pond. An autopsy ruled her death a homicide, though the cause has not been disclosed. Authorities continue to investigate and are asking for any witnesses who saw her paddleboarding Wednesday evening to come forward, CBS News reports. The community is shaken by the news, and a GoFundMe account has raised over $17,000 to support Stewart. CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey are under criminal investigation for potential wrongdoing related to the Trump-Russia probe, including allegedly making false statements to Congress, this according to DOJ sources. The probe stems from newly declassified reviews, suggesting that Brennan pushed to include the discredited Steele dossier in the 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment, despite internal objections, while publicly testifying otherwise. Investigators are also examining possible broader conspiracy aspects of their actions, Fox News has reported. Both the CIA and the FBI declined to comment. A man and two children were killed in record-breaking flash floods that hit New Mexico on Tuesday. Heavy rains over burn scars from last year's wildfires caused the Rio Ruidoso to surge to 20 feet, breaking previous records. More than 65 people were rescued, with 3 hospitalized in stable condition. Around 35 to 50 homes were damaged or destroyed. Officials issued multiple alerts and had the National Guard in place, but warned the flooding developed rapidly, ABC News reported. Further rain and flooding remain a risk, and federal disaster aid has been requested. Migrant detainees in Florida's Everglades detention facility, nicknamed Alligator Alcatraz, are alleging harsh conditions, including power outages, a lack of water, limited food, poor sanitation, and mosquito infestations. Detainees say they can't shower or access attorneys and complain of spoiled food and freezing tents. The facility is state-run, not ICE-operated, NBC News reports. Advocates and local officials are demanding oversight, with Miami-Dade's mayor asking the state for access and reports on conditions amid calls to shut down the center. 2 people died in Guatemala when rocks fell on their vehicle during a series of earthquakes on Tuesday. Over 37 earthquakes and aftershocks, ranging from magnitude 3.0 to 5.7, were recorded, causing landslides, evacuations, and minor damage. The epicenter was in Zacatepec, ABC News reports. An orange alert was declared and rescue efforts were underway for people buried by landslides. Wendy's CEO Kirk Tanner has been named the new chief executive of the Hershey Company, effective August the 18th, succeeding Michelle Buck, who is retiring after nearly 20 years with Hershey. Tanner, who joined Wendy's in 2024 after a long career at PepsiCo, will return to the consumer packaged goods sector. Hershey praised Tanner's extensive experience in snacks, beverages, M&A, and innovation. Michelle Buck will stay on as an advisor through the end of the year, CNBC reported. Meanwhile, Wendy's CFO Ken Cook will serve as the interim CEO starting on July the 18th as the company begins its search for a new permanent CEO. New book entitled 2024: How Trump Retook the White House and the Democrats Lost America describes First Lady Jill Biden's growing influence as President Joe Biden's political fortunes declined. The authors say that First Lady Jill Biden emerged as a powerful, protective figure who encouraged President Biden to stay in the 2024 race, even after a disastrous debate against Donald Trump had raised concerns about his age and his cognitive fitness. Her top aide, Anthony Bernal, also gained sway in the administration, clashing with other advisors and staying close to Jill Biden throughout. The book details how the First Lady defended Hunter Biden during his trial, managed her husband's schedule, and pushed back against staff that she felt mishandled events, all while Democratic leaders pressured Biden to drop out, Fox News reports. Despite these efforts, President Biden ultimately ended his re-election campaign less than a month after that debate, endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee. Trump's recent letters announcing steep new U.S. tariffs on imports from over a dozen countries, including allies, have prompted, quote, shock and, quote, regret abroad, while leaving room for further negotiations. Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Malaysia, and South Africa all expressed disappointment at the new tariffs, ranging from 20% to 36%, but signaled that they would continue talks with the United States to try to reduce them before the August 1st deadline. President Trump shared the letters on social media, suggesting rates could be adjusted depending on ongoing negotiations, CNBC has reported. The United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution Monday urging Afghanistan's Taliban rulers to end their escalating oppression of women and girls and to eliminate all terrorist groups. Despite United States and Israeli opposition, the resolution passed 116 to 2 with 12 abstentions. It also calls for economic recovery and humanitarian aid for Afghanistan. The measure is non-binding but signals global condemnation of the Taliban's harsh policies since 2021, including bans on girls' education beyond the 6th grade, ABC News reports. The United States opposed the resolution, arguing it rewards Taliban failures, while sponsors stressed it shows Afghan women have not been forgotten. ExxonMobil warned that lower oil and gas prices could reduce its second quarter earnings by about $1.5 billion compared to the previous quarter. Brent crude prices fell 11%, and U.S. natural gas prices dropped 9% in quarter number 2 due to increased OPEC supply. Exxon is expected to report adjusted earnings of $1.53 per share for the quarter when it releases full results on the 1st of August, the New York Post reports. The company earned $6.8 billion from upstream operations and $7.71 billion in total profit in quarter number 1. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte began a 3-day state visit to the United Kingdom, greeted by King Charles III and Queen Camilla in Windsor. It was the first French presidential state visit to Britain since 2008 and the first by an EU leader since Brexit. The visit aims to strengthen United Kingdom and France relations, with talks expected on migration, defense, security, and economic growth. Macron and King Charles rode together in an open-top carriage procession before a state banquet at Windsor Castle, where the king will emphasize shared values and the need to confront global threats together, the BBC reports. Macron will also meet the Prime Minister Keir Starmer to discuss issues like channel crossings and Ukraine. Russia launched its largest drone attack of the war on Ukraine overnight, using 741 drones and 13 missiles. This, according to President Zelensky. Ukraine's Air Force said it shot down most of the drones and several missiles, but impacts were recorded in multiple regions. Zelensky called it the biggest single-day aerial attack thus far, criticizing Moscow for rejecting peace efforts. Poland raised its air defense alert during the strikes, ABC News reports. Meanwhile, the United States has temporarily frozen some planned air defense aid to Ukraine, prompting Kyiv to push for renewed talks on critical military support. Active members of Canada's armed forces are among 4 people charged in an alleged plot to form an anti-government militia and seize land in Quebec. Police say the group conducted military-style training, used prohibited weapons and explosives, and planned to create a violent anti-government community. 3 suspects face terrorism-related charges, while all 4 face weapons charges. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police began investigating in March of 2023, seizing explosives, ammunition, and tactical gear, The Telegraph has reported. The case is being treated as ideologically motivated violent extremism. By the 7th of 2025, NASA released striking new images from the Hubble and the James Webb Space Telescopes, showing 2 star clusters, NGC 460 and NGC 456, in the Small Magellanic Cloud, which is a nearby dwarf galaxy. By combining Hubble's visible light and Webb's infrared views, scientists gained unprecedented insight into star birth and evolution in conditions resembling the early universe. The images reveal detailed gas, dust, and stellar structures, helping astronomers better understand how stars form and interact with their surroundings, the Daily Galaxy reported. He has accused the Chinese military of targeting one of its aircraft with a laser during an EU mission over the Red Sea. The incident, which forced the German plane to abort its mission and land safely, occurred during Operation Aspides, which is a defensive EU effort against attacks by Iranian-backed Houthi rebels. Germany summoned the Chinese ambassador to protest, calling the laser targeting unacceptable and dangerous, Sky News reports. China has not yet responded, though it has denied similar past accusations involving U.S. aircraft. Samsung Electronics forecast a 56% drop in second quarter profits, projecting an operating profit of 4.6 trillion won, far below analyst expectations. The decline is attributed to inventory adjustments, U.S. restrictions on advanced AI chips for China, and lagging behind rivals like SK Hynix in high bandwidth memory HBM chips, which are critical for AI. Samsung is still working to get its latest HBM chip certified by NVIDIA, the dominant player in the AI chip demand. Weak orders and stiff competition also challenge Samsung's chip foundry business, CNBC reports. And despite these issues, Samsung stock is up over 16% this year, with detailed Q2 results expected later this month. 11 people were killed and over 500 arrested during anti-government protests across Kenya on Monday, this according to the police. The demonstrations marked the 35th anniversary of the pro-democracy Saba Saba March and were fueled by anger over corruption, police brutality, and recent deaths in custody. Security forces used tear gas, water cannons, and reportedly live fire to disperse crowds in cities including Nairobi. Despite previous tax hikes being withdrawn, protests have continued amid a cost of living crisis and ongoing allegations of rights abuses, CNN has reported. Authorities say all incidents will be investigated. Israeli soldiers were killed and 14 wounded in a Hamas roadside bomb attack in northern Gaza on Monday evening. The bombs, detonated in succession during a ground operation, struck several Israeli soldiers. A Hamas cell also opened fire during the ambush. Israeli forces responded with air support to prevent possible abductions. The attack is part of ongoing operations to clear remaining Hamas operatives, with Israel now controlling about 70% of Gaza, the Times of Israel has reported. The war, sparked by Hamas's October 7th assault, has claimed thousands of lives on both sides. A 35-year-old man died by suicide after running onto the tarmac at the Milan Bergamo airport and then throwing himself into the engine of an Airbus A319 that was preparing for takeoff. He was not a passenger or airport employee, and he had entered the restricted area without a ticket, evading police before the fatal act. The incident led to a temporary suspension of airport operations, flight cancellations, and diversions. All passengers and crew on board were unharmed. Authorities are investigating the circumstances, the Daily Mail reports. Similar tragic incidents involving jet engines have occurred in Iran and the United States in recent years. More than 100 people have died and many remain missing after devastating flash floods hit central Texas on July the 4th. Rescue teams continue searching through mud-covered riverbanks as further storms threaten the region. Among the dead are at least 27 girls and staff members from Camp Mystic, with 11 others from the camp still missing. Kerr County was especially hit hard, with 84 confirmed deaths. The White House rejected any claims that federal budget cuts to the National Weather Service worsened the disaster response, emphasizing that warnings were issued in advance, the BBC reported. Local officials face renewed calls to install flood warning sirens to prevent future tragedies. People have been arrested on attempted murder charges after a planned ambush outside the Prairie Land Detention Center in Texas, where a police officer was shot in the neck on July the 4th. According to the U.S. Attorney, the suspects, dressed in black military-style gear, set off fireworks and vandalized property to lure out Immigration and Customs Enforcement personnel before opening fire. Officers recovered weapons, body armor, and anti-ice flyers at the scene. The officer was treated and released from the hospital, the Associated Press reported. The suspects face multiple federal charges, and the investigation is currently ongoing. Federal magistrate judge in Wisconsin has recommended against dismissing the criminal case against Milwaukee judge Hannah Dugan, who is accused of helping an undocumented immigrant evade immigration arrest. Dugan, 65 years old, faces charges of concealing a person sought by immigration authorities and obstructing removal proceedings. Her lawyers argued she has judicial immunity, but the magistrate ruled that immunity does not extend to criminal charges, especially when the acts are alleged to be corrupt. The recommendation now goes to a U.S. district judge for a final decision, ABC News reported. Dugan, who has pleaded not guilty, remains suspended from her duties pending the trial. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass said that she personally intervened to stop a federal immigration enforcement operation in MacArthur Park on Monday. Bass confronted U.S. Border Patrol agents, demanding they leave, and said they departed shortly after. Video showed uniformed authorities on foot and horseback moving through the park where children had been playing. Bass called the operation, quote, absolutely outrageous. Federal officials said that Customs and Border Protection led the large-scale operation, with ICE support and military units previously deployed to protect federal property, The Hill has reported. DHS declined to comment on details of the enforcement action. Executions in Saudi Arabia hit a record high in 2024, with 345 people executed last year and 180 in the first half of this year. This, according to Amnesty International. Activists highlight the kingdom's growing use of the death penalty for non-violent drug offenses, which make up about 2/3 of recent executions. Many foreign nationals on death row face unfair trials and a lack of legal representation, the Associated Press reported. Despite Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's 2022 claim that executions are limited to homicide cases, Saudi Arabia remains one of the world's top executioners, second only to China and Iran. Families of the condemned live in fear, often unaware when the executions may occur. Monsoon rains triggered severe flooding in Nepal's Botakoshi River on Tuesday, destroying the main friendship bridge that linked Nepal and China and left 20 people missing, 14 Nepalese and 6 Chinese. Rescue teams, including an army helicopter, have saved 55 people thus far. The flooding swept away homes, trucks, and parked vehicles along the border. The disaster has halted trade along this key route, forcing reliance on longer alternatives through India, the Associated Press reports. Monsoon floods regularly disrupt life in Nepal between the months of June and September. Travis Decker, the Washington state man wanted for killing his 3 young daughters, may have been spotted over the weekend in Idaho's Sawtooth National Forest, authorities have said. A family reported seeing someone matching his description near Bear Creek, which is about 100 miles east of Boise. Decker has been missing since June the 2nd, when the bodies of his daughters, aged 5, 8, and 9, were found at a Washington campsite. Federal and local agencies are investigating new tips and searching the area, CBS News reports. The U.S. Marshal Service is also offering up to $20,000 for information leading to his arrest. An imposter used AI-generated audio to mimic Secretary of State Marco Rubio's voice and then contacted senior U.S. officials and foreign ministers through Signal, this according to a State Department cable. At least 5 people, including 3 foreign ministers, a U.S. governor, and a member of Congress, received fake voicemails or text messages from the impersonator, who also created a fake Signal account using Marco Rubio's name. The scheme aimed to gain sensitive information or access. The State Department is investigating, stressing it is working to strengthen cybersecurity, the Independent has reported. The incident follows other recent breaches involving Signal used by U.S. officials. Attorney General Pam Bondi is under scrutiny after a newly revealed DOJ memo found no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein kept a client list or blackmailed powerful people or was murdered. The memo, first reported by Axios, says that jail video supports the official finding of suicide and confirms no further charges will be brought. Bondi previously claimed on Fox News that she had an Epstein, quote, client list ready to release, fueling conspiracy theories, Newsweek reported. The DOJ memo says much of the sealed material protects victims and contains no grounds for new investigations, criticizing the spread of unfounded theories about Epstein's case. Donald Trump's Justice Department and the FBI have concluded that there is no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein blackmailed powerful figures, kept a client list, or was murdered. This, according to a newly revealed memo. The memo states prison video footage shows no one entered Epstein's cell area the night he died in 2019, supporting the official finding of suicide. It also says no further charges will be brought in the case, Axios has reported. These findings mark the first formal rejection by Trump's administration of widespread conspiracy theories about Epstein's death and alleged blackmail operations. An armed attacker in tactical gear opened fire on Border Patrol agents outside a Border Patrol annex in McAllen, Texas on Monday. Agents and local police returned fire, killing the gunman. No federal agents were injured, but a McAllen police officer was shot and is in stable condition. Authorities believe the attack was a targeted ambush on the Border Patrol. The FBI is now leading the investigation, Fox News reports. The incident follows another shooting days earlier in Texas, where an officer was wounded near an ICE detention facility. Several suspects in that case were also arrested. Billionaire Elon Musk announced on X that his new America Party will support the Second Amendment, Bitcoin, free speech, and reduced regulations. He endorsed a platform with goals like cutting debt, modernizing the military with artificial intelligence, promoting tech, and centrist policies elsewhere. Musk said the party aims to challenge the two-party system and focus first on House and Senate races before potentially backing a presidential candidate. Fox News has reported. The U.S. Department of Agriculture plans to release millions of sterile, irradiated flies over Texas and Mexico to combat the New World screwworm, an insect whose flesh-eating larvae infest wounds of animals and humans. Sterile male flies will mate with wild females, leading to infertile eggs and reducing the population. Though eradicated from the United States in 1966, screwworms have recently re-emerged in Texas after an outbreak in Mexico, The Independent has reported. To support the program, a breeding facility in Mexico and a distribution center in Texas will open next year, reviving a method that nearly eliminated the pest decades ago. The BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and new members including Indonesia and Iran, issued a joint declaration at a summit in Brazil condemning rising unilateral tariffs without naming the United States or President Trump. They warned such measures violate WTO rules and harm global trade and supply chains. The statement comes as President Trump's 90-day pause on new tariffs nears its end. He has threatened to reinstate higher rates on countries that don't make deals with the United States, and said on Truth Social he would impose an extra 10% tariff on any country aligning with BRICS, The Hill has reported. BRICS also criticized NATO's planned defense spending increases, which were pushed by Trump. Have discovered a 3,500-year-old city named Panico in northern Peru, believed to be a major trading hub linking Pacific Coast Andes and Amazon communities. Founded between 1800 and 1500 BC, Panico offers new insights into the fate of America's oldest civilization, Corral. The site features 18 structures, including temples and homes, with artifacts like clay sculptures and seashell necklaces, the BBC reports. Panico's strategic location suggests that it was a continuation of Corral society, which thrived 5,000 years ago. U.S. 10-year Treasury yields rose Monday as investors reacted to trade tensions surrounding the expiration of a 90-day tariff reprieve, with tariffs set to revert to April levels this week. President Trump also threatened new 10% tariffs on countries supporting, quote, anti-American policies of the BRICS group. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent hinted at several upcoming trade announcements, CNBC has reported. BRICS leaders condemned Trump's tariff actions as unjustified protectionism, is appealing a €500 million fine from the European Union for allegedly restricting app developers from informing customers about alternative offers outside its app store. Apple calls the penalty unprecedented and argues the European Union's demands add unnecessary complexity for users and developers. The European Commission plans to defend its decision in court, BBC has reported. Analysts say Apple's appeal was expected, but highlights the complex, lengthy process of enforcing such regulatory changes. CoreWeave announced it will acquire data center provider Core Scientific in a $9 billion all-stock deal, aiming to boost its AI infrastructure. The acquisition will cut $10 billion in lease obligations and enhance efficiency, expanding CoreWeave's U.S. data center capacity to 1.3 gigawatts, with room for more growth. The deal, expected to close in late 2025, values Core Scientific at 66% premium, with its shareholders receiving CoreWeave shares but owning less than 10% of the combined company, CNBC has reported. Bavarian startup The Exploration Company, or TEC, is investigating the loss of its Nix Mission Possible space capsule, which carried the ashes of 166 people and was supposed to return them to Earth after orbiting twice. The capsule re-entered the atmosphere but lost communication just before parachute deployment, and recovery is unlikely. TEC apologized to clients and formed an independent investigation team. The capsule also carried cannabis seeds for a Mars growth study, the DW has reported. The mission marks a historic but tragic first attempt at returning memorial spaceflight ashes. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei made his first public appearance since Iran's recent 12-day war with Israel, attending a ceremony at Tehran's mosque ahead of a Shia festival of Ashura. The conflict began on June the 13th, with an Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear and military sites, leading to Iranian retaliatory strikes. The United States also joined in, hitting Iran's nuclear facilities on 22nd of June. Over 900 people were killed in the fighting. Khamenei had previously only appeared in pre-recorded messages, amid speculation that he was in hiding, the BBC has reported. His return was widely covered on Iranian state media, which encouraged public celebration. Items from what was once called the world's largest time capsule, sealed in 1975 in Nebraska, went on display Friday, attracting hundreds eager to see decades-old treasures. The capsule contained thousands of letters, personal mementos, a teal suit, and even a yellow Chevy Vega. Though some items were damaged by moisture, most were preserved. The project was the vision of Harold Davison, who wanted future generations to remember the year 1975, NBC News has reported. Visitors retrieved family artifacts and reflected on the passage of time, with plans underway to create a permanent exhibit to preserve the memories. Chaos broke out at an ICE detention facility in Portland, Oregon, as hundreds of protesters clashed with police officers while trying to storm the holding cells. Police used tear gas, smoke bombs, and rubber bullets to disperse the crowd, declaring an unlawful assembly and making several arrests. The protest, part of a 28-day occupation, was sparked by President Donald Trump's signing of a $150 billion bill increasing border enforcement funding while cutting Medicaid, the Daily Mail has reported. Demonstrators also protested the detention of a vineyard worker arrested by ICE outside of his church and then transferred to Washington, with supporters demanding his release. Japan warned of more strong earthquakes near its southwestern islands after over 1,000 tremors in the past 2 weeks, including a 5.5 earthquake that forced some evacuations. Officials urged the public to ignore rumors of an imminent disaster fueled by a manga that some interpret as predicting a major earthquake this month. The Japan Meteorological Agency stressed that earthquakes cannot be precisely predicted, CNN has reported. The rumors have even affected tourism, with fewer arrivals from Hong Kong, despite overall record visitor numbers this year. Human remains were found at the site of a fireworks warehouse explosion near Esparto in Northern California, where 7 people had been reported missing. The blast on Tuesday caused a large fire and forced cancellation of local 4th of July events. Recovery and identification efforts are ongoing, and the cause is under investigation. The warehouse was operated by Devastating Pyrotechnics, CNN has reported. Separately, in Los Angeles, a fireworks-related fire killed 1 man, critically injured a woman, and damaged 4 homes Thursday evening. Parisians and tourists swarmed the Seine River this weekend for the first time in over a century, after the city officially opened 3 free bathing sites following a major €1.4 billion cleanup. The project, accelerated for last year's Olympics, improved sewage connections, water treatment, and stormwater storage. About 1,000 swimmers daily can now access sites near the Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame, and the National Library until late August. Lifeguards, facilities, and daily water quality checks are in place, The Guardian has reported. The effort is part of a broader push to reclaim urban waterways for swimming amid rising summer temperatures. British Foreign Secretary David Lammy met Syria's interim president Ahmed al-Sharaa in Damascus on Saturday, restoring diplomatic ties after 14 years of conflict and tension. The visit follows the ouster of Bashar Assad in December by al-Sharaa's forces. Britain pledged $129 million in new aid to support Syria's recovery, humanitarian needs, and chemical weapons removal, the Associated Press reported. Lammy also visited Beirut to discuss border security with the Lebanese president, who said Lebanon will boost army presence along the Israeli border to 10,000 troops. North Carolina Governor Josh Stein vetoed 4 Republican-backed bills targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, initiatives, and transgender policies. Stein called the DEI measure, quote, mean-spirited and divisive, criticizing them for marginalizing vulnerable groups while the legislature failed to pass a budget. The bills would have banned DEI programs and funding in state and local governments. The transgender bill, originally focused on age verification for adult websites, was amended to ban state-funded gender-affirming care for prisoners and enforce recognition of sex assigned at birth, Fox News has reported. All 4 veto bills now return to the Republican-controlled General Assembly, which may try to override the vetoes, but is 1 vote short of a House supermajority. An Australian court found Aaron Patterson, 50 years old, guilty of 3 counts of murder and 1 of attempted murder for serving a 2023 lunch of beef Wellington laced with deadly mushrooms that killed her former in-laws, Don and Gail Patterson, and Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson. Heather's husband, Ian Wilkinson, survived after weeks in the hospital. Patterson, who claimed it was an accident, faces life in prison after the jury's guilty verdict following a 10-week trial. Sentencing is pending, ABC News has reported. Trinidad and Tobago awarded Indian Prime Minister Modi its highest civilian honor, the Order of the Republic, on Friday, the first time it has gone to a foreign leader. During his first official visit to the country, Modi emphasized the historic ties between the 2 nations, dating back to Indian indentured laborers arriving in the year 1845. The visit focused on strengthening partnerships in energy, health, and security, the DW has reported. Modi also announced that 6th-generation citizens of Indian origin in Trinidad and Tobago would be eligible for Overseas Citizen of India cards. Indonesia's Mount Luotobi Laki-Laki erupted on Monday, sending ash 11 miles into the sky, blanketing villages, and forcing at least 24 international and several domestic flight cancellations. No casualties were reported. The eruption, the volcano's biggest since November of 2024, triggered gas and lava flows up to 5 kilometers down its slopes. Authorities maintained the highest alert level and expanded exclusion zones as volcanic activity increased, ABC News reports. Indonesia, located on the seismically active Ring of Fire, has 120 active volcanoes. 11 civilians were killed and over 80 injured, including children, in Russian attacks across Ukraine, as Moscow intensified drone and missile strikes on civilian areas. Meanwhile, Russia's transport minister, Roman Starovojit, was found dead in an apparent suicide hours after President Putin dismissed him amid alleged corruption-related military fortifications. Ukraine, facing troop shortages and delays in Western aid, is ramping up drone production to bolster air defenses, the Associated Press reported. Heavy fighting continues along the 1,000-kilometer front line, with Russia targeting Ukrainian mobilization centers and Ukraine responding with drone attacks deep into Russian territory. Veterans working with the U.S. and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation were injured in a grenade attack while delivering aid to Palestinians. They are in stable condition. GHF blamed Hamas for the assault, citing prior threats and claims that Hamas had offered bounties on its workers. The organization shared evidence of Iranian-made grenades used in the attack and criticized the international community for failing to condemn threats against aid workers, Fox News has reported. Despite the violence, GHF vowed to continue its mission, having delivered 60 million meals since May.